most people are not aware that when you approach your late 20s, as you are, that you start to approach the time in your life where you are going to be going through these cycles that everybody goes through, where certain things or themes are going to be highlighted in your life, in your experience, things that you are intended to learn from, grow from, and help you become the fullest expression of who you are. Human design reveals who you are energetically and who you came here to be. I'm Dana, your human design guide.
And I'm Haley, on this journey with you to uncover the power of human design.
Together, we're here to explore how embracing your authentic self is the ultimate path to a life of more freedom and fulfillment.
Welcome to the Human Design Hive podcast. Let's get into it.
Well, hello there, Haley. How you doing today?
Hello.
How are you doing today?
That's not how I start.
Oh, well, I asked you a
Maybe
question.
I do. I don't know.
Oh, I thought you had a cute little ponytail there, but you just got your hair up.
Well, it's just like a thingy.
Yeah.
I saw a hack on how to do it.
Well, so glad to have you here in front of me again, which you did say, oh, isn't this half the reason we do the podcast? Just so that we get to see each other.
Hi.
I said, yeah, maybe. Maybe there's a little more to it than that, but it is definitely
Okay, maybe a
perk.
third of the reason.
Yeah. But I feel like we were just here because we did just record again a few days ago. We seem to go in these cycles of like getting a lot done at once and then scrambling. And I think we're in the middle somewhere right now.
Yeah.
I'd like to batch more episodes, but we just recorded and released the one about the open centers, my open head, and yeah, I don't know if I'll ever be that organized. I've really tried to become more organized and let's what's the word? I want to say like future thinking. I mean, I'm always thinking the future, but maybe planning ahead. I don't even know what the phrase is. Planning ahead. No, I do know how to plan ahead, but yeah, it doesn't always work for me to get too far ahead because then I start losing track of what's happening in the present. So I have to find that balance somewhere.
I mean, your sacral isn't really supposed to look that far ahead.
That's
It's
right.
not supposed to know.
And I know, and it's something I'm glad you reminded me because that was the point of it. Is I also try to remind myself sometimes. It's like, yes, I can have. When I tell people you can have intentions, and you can plan to a certain degree, right? But every single detail and how you will get there, you can't always plan for, right? So I know that that's something that in life that has made me a little more flexible and adaptable, but still, it could also get away from you sometimes. But anyways, as I said, cycles, which is a tie-in to what we're going to talk about today, because we are going to talk about some life cycles, planetary cycles that affect everyone. And we're going to focus on three major ones, which is around Saturn and Uranus and Chiron. But first, I want to talk about another cycle that we all have also. We have a solar return every year. Do you know what a solar return is?
Is it our birthday?
Yeah, it's where the sun returns back to the gate it was in when you were born.
Okay,
And
cool.
it wasn't our birthday, but it was our baby's birthday. It was yesterday, day before.
Yeah.
Yes. Our puppies had a birthday.
Our dogs.
Yeah, you're my baby. You don't have your baby's name is Bailey.
Yes.
Of course, mine's Roxy. And our girls are 7 years old now.
Yeah.
Seems like just yesterday we went and picked them up.
I know.
At the farm out there in Gallivant's Ferry.
Way out there where I wasn't planning on getting a dog.
No, you were not. I wasn't planning on you getting a dog either. Of course, you weren't living with me. Yeah, I remember that. Your dad and I were going to go because I saw this puppy on Facebook that looked like our dear departed Shadow. And it had been a year or so, about a year since
Mhm.
Shadow had passed, but this puppy looked just like her. I was like, "Oh my gosh." And we went out there and you're like, "I wanna come." And I thought you just wanted to go play with puppies, but on the way out there, you're like,
That
"No,
was
I'm getting
my
a dog."
plans.
It's like, "You are not getting a dog. You live in an apartment. You don't know where you're gonna live. You don't know what you're gonna be doing." You're like, "I don't care. I'm doing it. If I want one, I'm gonna get one."
I
Oh, jeez.
texted I texted Presley, I was like, "How mad would you be if I came home with a dog or with a puppy?" And he's like, "I don't care as long as you call the apartment and make sure we can have it." I was like, "Done."
Done. And the rest is history. Our dear
Yeah.
girls. So according to dog years, that would put them they're coming squarely into middle age, aren't they?
They're like 49, I think.
This would be appropriate for what we're talking about today, the life cycles. But we're gonna be talking about humans.
Not dogs.
Yeah. So cycles. So we've kind of referenced these cycles before.
Mhm.
We've definitely talked about Chiron before. We had a whole episode about Chiron.
Mhm.
And I know that now when I do readings or I'm consulting someone's chart for just curiosity, one of the first things you want to do, even if they're not line 6 profiles, I usually look at their age because depending on what it is they're asking me or what they want clarity on or what's happening in their life, a lot of times it's helpful to know how old they are and what cycle they are currently going through because this is something that's not just human design knowledge. This is astrology.
Mhm.
And I'm going to be looking at it from the perspective of human design. But when you're looking at it from astrology, there's also a lot of other factors that if I were doing some kind of research into someone's chart or a specific time, I don't necessarily do life cycle analysis readings. There's plenty of people out there that do, but it's certainly, excuse me, I take it into consideration when I'm doing them. But there are certain things like where the planets are falling in your chart, what houses they're in, what signs they're in, stuff like that. But
Mhm.
but for today, I might reference that. I don't know because I don't know a ton about it enough to like give a presentation on it
Mhm.
as far as astrology. But for I think enough knowledge here to kind of pique your curiosity as you're looking at your own chart and your own place in life and see where you are and see if maybe this can help you as you navigate through some of these cycles. Sound good?
Mhm.
Okay. So basically the what a lot of people don't realize, although I can see there is some more widespread cultural awareness of this as I was looking into these cycles. Most people are not aware that when you approach your late 20s as you are, that you start to approach the time in your life where you are going to be going through these cycles that everybody goes through, where certain things or themes are going to be highlighted in your life, in your experience, things that you are intended to learn from, grow from, and help you become the fullest expression of who you are. Now, you being a line 6, this is going
Mhm.
to really kind of mirror or show the path that you're on anyhow, which is interesting because the 6 is the role model, right? And it is supposed to show us, it kind of does model all of, I mean, it's not funny, it's the intention. It does model all these stages that you go through, that everybody goes through, but it's even felt more intensely for the role model because at the end of all these cycles, you are there to then kind of embody what can be achieved or what can come about if you go through these cycles with a open open mind, open heart, willingness to learn, willingness to grow. Now, there's a difference between someone my age and someone your age in the sense that you and your generation and those coming
Mhm.
after you have the benefit of this knowledge being so much more widely known and
Mhm.
shared without a lot of stigma or
Side eye.
ridicule, side eye. Because the first one we're going to talk about is the Saturn return. And it was funny to see that I guess apparently lately in pop culture, even like Ariana Grande like references her Saturn Return on her latest album. Like there's some
Oh,
interlude there. There's who else is it? Like SZA, I think they're also saying she's written a song about one of these country stars recently talking about their Saturn return, which I think is great. And it can relate to it. And so Saturn is actually a planet that comes back into the place it was in your birth chart every 29 years. So most people just talk about Saturn return, but there's actually 3 Saturn returns. And it makes sense
yeah.
if you live long enough to get to your third. And so we're not really going to talk about the third because you would be like in your close to 80 or something like that, or yeah,
Close to
something like
90. If it's every 29, it's roughly 30, 60, 90 minus
uh-huh.
3, so 87.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes. So you should be set by then.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Saturn, your first Saturn return, then, as you can tell, happens roughly around 29 years is when it comes back. But because of the way the
Oh,
shape of
Presley's
the,
in his.
yeah, cosmos, it's like, it's not an exact time. Hold on one second. Now you mentioned Presley. So I use the software Genetic Matrix to run a lot of these charts because it has innumerable like charts and variations of charts and all the different things you can do it. It has a lot, and it's really good at looking at these life cycle charts because they have a whole section on just that. And so it can tell you, it can compute for you the actual moment that the planet returns to the place in the
Oh.
sky where it was when you were born. And so that's not going to be an exact 20. I mean, it can, but it's the way life is. So, because like he was born in January, but
Mhm.
his Saturn return was this year, February 18th,
Mm.
2024. And so Saturn, so it could really start happening anywhere between like 27, 28 to like 30. It lasts roughly 3 years because I know we've referenced it before, but when these planets are moving, they're big. These are big outer planets and they take time to move through the chart. As you can see, it takes 29 years for it to go through all 64 gates.
Mm.
So you will start to feel the influence of some of these transits. And Saturn is known as the teacher, the disciplinarian. And where Saturn falls in your chart represents responsibility, your karma, your cycles of maturity, like leveling up, that kind of thing. And this first one, as you can probably guess, there's a lot about moving from your youth into adulthood.
Boo.
I know. Well, what's interesting is because when we are going to be talking about the next one, we talk about Uranus, before those outer planets were discovered, Uranus and everything, we were these 7 centered beings. And a Saturn return for someone, like they were close to 30 long time ago, that was you were getting pretty old. Like most people never saw their second Saturn return, like when they're almost 60. But anyways, this cycle here, as you are going through and approaching the end of your 20s, as you may or may not be feeling, it you start to feel that separation between like realizing you were a kid, a youth, and now you're an adult. Even though I will say you never feel like fully an adult because what is that? I don't know.
No one knows.
I don't know. But what this transition is about then, if and this is especially true for the line 6 because we always talk about the line 6 is before their first Saturn return, the first like 30 years of their life, 29, 30 years of life, they're living as a line 3. And they also say that all of us really up until that point, youth and our childhood and early adolescence and all this other stuff is more of a what they call a subjective time in life where life's just kind of happening because you don't really have all these big plans. You don't have a lot of experience. You spent the first probably well, at least 18 years probably living with other people. You may or may not be on
Mhm.
your own. You may not have gone to college. You may have formed relationships or not, but so much of it is subjective to whoever you're around, right?
Yeah. And
You would
I mean,
agree?
you like there's things you have to do, like you have to do your school through high school, so it's like there's things you have to do that you don't have
Mhm.
that say over whether or not to do it.
Mhm. And yeah, and say I think about children, parents in the military. They move around a lot. They don't
Mhm.
have any say in that. Or maybe your parents had another situation where you either maybe your parents split up, got divorced, like the relationships that come in and out of your life. It's not so much control you have there. And so as you enter into your 20s and start stepping into adulthood, start making those own decisions for yourselves is when you can really start to get to know yourself better. And then enters Saturn return later in your 20s, which is going to kind of help bring a lot of these themes to life and really have you looking at, okay, so how I was living so far, is this my life? Is this me? Kind of thing. And so
Mhm.
I think it's really interesting that everybody started talking about that quarter life crisis too now, right? At
Yeah.
25, which I think could be starting to feel the effects of this happening because it's approaching, if you think about it, it's approaching where it was coming into your, but also a lot of other things contribute to that too, like a lot of,
A lot of societal pressure, a lot of
there you
social
go, that's the
media.
word. Societal pressure, expectations, being flat out misled about what's important in life and what's not, being the great lie that just go to college and everything will be perfect. A lot of kids are getting out of
It's a
college and
scam.
finding out a lot sooner things they might have discovered later in life. But because, I think it's because now it's not so much the norm to either get a husband in college or get married in college or after people served in the military and then they start families, which is what my parents did. My dad was in the military and then they got married and then he went off to Vietnam and came back and then they started, but so people like got married earlier and priorities were different. Now I think women in particular have more options in life.
Mhm. Well, we can have
And
our own bank accounts, so that helps.
yeah, you can have your own bank account. You could own a house if you wanted to. It's crazy. Uh, yeah, I mean, that is really crazy that between my early childhood and yours, the difference is there.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I think that I was only in the early 70s when it
So,
became,
like, yeah, something like that. Yeah, saw recently that I was like, "Oh, shit. That's right."
yeah. So the, this period here with the Saturn return is all about, identifying yourself for yourself, like taking a look at it and deciding, hey, what kind of adult do I want to be? And they call Saturn the disciplinarian because it is about being responsible and it is about learning and maturity. But as we've discussed many times before, this is where growth occurs because you have to kind of like examine things and you've got to be tasked with certain challenges, let's say, in order to grow from that. Now, so Saturn can help point out these influences in the cosmos can help point out possibly where you've not been living true to yourself and give you this kind of urge to want to break free from any like even self-imposed limitations you've put on yourself because like I said it's a time of questioning and you're like what do I really want, what is my life about, right? So it's a time where you do start taking on greater responsibilities. You might get more serious in life. Like I've been messing around for too long. It's time to double down and really get into this business of life, finding more structure in your life, creating stronger foundations for your future. And whatever direction you continue or you choose to go, or that Saturn reveals to you as a way to go, is kind of a thing that's going to continue to be developed over the coming decades of your life, really. And so, even though the return starts around then, you think about, you're laying new roads, you're creating new things, and so it kind of puts you on that trajectory of where you're going to go, especially in your 30s. And like I said, this is obviously significant because after 30, they say the sixth line goes up on the roof for 20 years. But doesn't mean there's nothing happening. There's a lot
Mhm.
going on. And so, one thing you can look at in a Saturn return from a human design perspective is when you run a chart for a Saturn return, it'll show you your chart, your birth chart, your natal chart, and then it shows you where the planets are on that particular day. Like I told you for Presley, it was like February 18th. I'm looking at yours.
Mhm.
Yours, you've got time, Haley. So you've got time to prepare. Yours is in a couple more years. Yours won't be until April 19th, 2026. So you
Yeah.
got a little bit more time. You had to breeze right through it. All this extra help. But so when you run that chart, it'll show you your information and then like your natal information and then the information for the solar return or for the Saturn return. And I mean, from an astrological standpoint, it would be looking just at the personality side because that's the day. You
Mhm.
don't really take into account the design side, but because that's not your Saturn return, the design side is not technically that, but it's all those energies are kind of
Mhm.
still marinating, let's say. And so you could look at the gates, the placements like the sun and earth gates. Your incarnation cross is a really good indicator of what you might be experiencing through that time period until like the next cycle, which is the Uranus opposition. There's going to be themes, there's going to be you know, what really is interesting is that in astrology, it's this 3-year cycle. In human design, like I said, it says it takes up this more of this longer view time of, like I said, between now and the Uranus opposition kind of time. There's going to be this main kind of themes going around what you're experiencing. So, for example, if I'm looking, which I am, I'm looking at yours.
Mhm.
Uh, when Saturn, your okay, so first of all, your Saturn in your birth chart, uh, conscious side is gate 17, unconscious side is gate 25. Okay. And so those are first
Okay.
things you're going to look at is what are the themes there? What are the lessons I need to learn around the themes of with gate 17 is gate of opinions. Um, and it's logical circuitry. It's about formulating the hypothesis or whatever of having the opinion of what you think is going to happen. Like if we're talking about in the human design aspect of it, taking the information that's come down through the 63-4 and then forming the hypothesis. This is what I think. But it could also be on the higher expression, well, yeah, that's a good thing. You're sharing your insight when people
Mhm.
ask you for it. You are, you do have a vision. You can see the patterns of what's possible and all this other stuff. But on the other side of it, it could also be like you could be a little bit too opinionated and have more of a it's my way or the highway. Like I know what I'm talking about and you don't. I'm right, you're wrong. It's having this very hard-nosed approach to life of not letting anybody else's input and believing that you're always the one that's right. So I would say it's also a line 4 there. So this could be something that it would be a theme in your you'll be learning about it through your relationships.
Mhm.
Okay. And then also you have a different gate, like I said, gate 25 in your unconscious. This is in your birth chart again. And gate 25 is about it's in the G center. It is the love of the spirit. It is about understanding that connection to higher source and knowing that you are here in this 3D reality. You are here, but you are also connected to something more. And so you could be keeping that kind of knowing that as you move through your life, these are kind of going to be themes around it, anyhow, of like you do have an incredible mind. You have a lot to contribute, but to also kind of stay open to that and know that it's probably in the service of something higher than just your own personal gain, which it always is. But then what I would look at then is also during your Saturn return, the incarnation cross there is a different incarnation cross because Saturn's going to be back in gate 17, but the everything else is kind of different because
Okay.
it's not an exact replication because
Hmm.
everything moves at different speeds, right?
So when you say the incarnation cross of it, you're saying with genetic matrix more on that day that it says my Saturn return
Yeah.
is? Okay.
Yeah. And so it comes back with the calculation that on that day in April 14th, 2026, the sun is going to be in gate 42, Earth is going to be in gate 22, and then on design side, it'd be 60 and 56. It also says that that day, that profile is a 5-1. And so the theory is as you journey through the next maybe decade of your life, these are energies that you're going to be able to tap into and learn from, get the experience of, and also, because they are your sun and your earth energies, they're very personal to you. It's your experience of what's going to be happening. And the theme of that incarnation cross kind of sets the theme for, or maybe what you're going to be learning about, kind of thing.
Hmm. Okay.
So the incarnation cross there for that day and time, for that
Hmm.
period, is the left angle cross of limitation. Now you
Okay.
also your birth chart left angle cross dominion. And so this, like I said, is themes of like growth and continuity, acceptance, stimulation. It's about learning about time management and completion because gate 42 is that gate of completion. It's in the sacral center. And so it's part of that beginnings and endings, like 42 is the endings part of it.
Hmm.
And so there could be a lot of themes throughout this, and who knows what it'll look like. You don't know what it'll look like. I think just understanding what lessons Saturn is wanting you to work on throughout your life, but then also understanding kind of just loosely the theme, it may help you. I don't know if it'll help you more in retrospect, but I think if you just know, hey, like this one, and also Chiron, because your Chiron's always kind of present as well, but I digress. You could more easily identify like, oh, wait a minute, this is maybe a lesson I need to learn here. Because this limitation that this one's talking about is it's about being able to kind of build the infrastructure of a dream. It's like having the foundation laid in the physical world for eventual manifestation. There's a lot of themes there around the timing and time management and structure, and but it's all to bring something new in, which is interesting because who knows what you'll be doing in that time.
Hmm.
But it's something to look at because it's suggesting that really it's a time to look at structure and foundations and how that is going to be something that's going to keep being built on as you move throughout your life. Now, like I said, it's hard to say what that is. Also, as a
Hmm.
5-1, just you might be um, feeling that experience more of going deeper on things as far as learning things. People might also, you might understand the influence of being a line 5, things like that. So it's just little things to pay attention to, but mainly that main theme of what Saturn wants to teach you because it's going to come around again in your second Saturn return
Hmm.
at the end of your 50s. But you'll go through other things before that. So I can look at it in retrospect for myself because I'm way past 29. When I went through my first Saturn cycle was in 2000. What was the date there? Saturn return. Did I say that right? I don't know if I
I
just
think
said that
so.
right or not. April 24th, 2000 was the technical time. And I'm sure you don't remember much. You were quite young then.
I was.
And so yeah, at that time I was I was a young mother. I had 2 kids. I had
Mhm.
I guess, a 1 and a 3-year-old, nearly 1-year-old and 3-year-old. And at that time, oh, I should say my Saturn uh, gates are in 2 and 23. And so that's like gate 2 is the receptive. It's about allowing, it's the direction of the sacral. It gives direction to that sacral energy in the 14 too.
Mhm.
And 23 is about simplifying things, kind of stripping things away. And so those would be, in my opinion, when I look back at my life, it was a time of kind of learning to simplify things a little bit. I don't say I did it very well because I was a young mother and you know a lot going on at that time. But what's interesting is that the incarnation cross of that time was the right angle cross of unexpected, and it was a 4-6 profile and the 4-1 profile. And so the way I interpret it and look at it, and I may be wrong, but this is my personal experience, is my life became very much about family. And this sun for that incarnation cross, that energy is gate 27, the gate of nurturing. And what that uh, looks like. So the right angle cross, the unexpected, is about caregiving, supporting others, helping them prepare really for life's unexpected twists and turns because it's 27 and 28 on the conscious and 41, 31 on the unconscious. And so it's stressing that people are the most important part of life and that connection is what gives us meaning. Now, up until this point, when I met your dad, I we both said we weren't ever going to get married, we weren't going to have children, right?
Mhm.
And then I think leading up to this Saturn return, the years beforehand, like I said, it was almost a switch that went off when I was like 26. And I was like, holy shit, we need to have kids. Why? I don't know. I was just like all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute. I wanna like have a life after I have kids. I don't what if I can't have kids? I was just like, oh man, we gotta like think about this. Do we want to have kids? And your dad's like, okay. So that got into action pretty quick. And so this became a time where connection's important, family's important, but also understanding that there's going to be challenges. There's going to be things that come up. That gate 28 shows us the game player. It's like up for the adventure of like what's going to happen. And so there is kind of a theme there of there's going to be things that happen in your life which you certainly can't predict in early, childhood and what's happening in your 30s,
Mhm.
and know that there's a reason for all these obstacles. Okay.
Mhm.
So
It's also
I would say,
interesting in
mhm.
that time with that being your cross for your Saturn return, you guys also had your own business. And
Yeah,
that
we
was
did
all
that
very
too.
unexpected. Every
Yeah.
summer was
Well, yes, the structure of it was unpredictable and
Mhm.
incredibly challenging, raising a family and starting a business at the same time. And I wouldn't say I really mastered a lot of those lessons as far as what Saturn was trying to teach me about trusting, because that gate too is, like I said, it's the receptive, but it's trusting that you are supported, having faith that things will work out. There was a lot of things that happened in those years that were like, honestly, I'll tell you, I was forced a couple times to come to terms with that. And it may have been around that time. I remember when that could have been around the time because we had just moved in here at the house we live in now in 2000,
Mhm.
because we lived in the other house when your brother was born. And it was when we lived there, it may have even been that prior summer. I don't even know. The business that we had radically changed because we had a beach business and we started, it was parasailing. It was still the same kind of thing, but we were at a beach location in partnership, parentheses, with your dad's best friend. He owned the contract. We ran the parasailing, and then we
Mhm.
found out literally 2 or 3 months before, I think it was like 2 months maybe before we were supposed to open, that he decided we weren't going to do that anymore, that he was giving our contract to someone else who was going to
Oh,
pay him more
okay,
money.
friend.
yeah, destroyed a friendship for sure.
I
But
bet it would.
and so, yes, that was very much a brought to my knees moment because that was our only source of income. And suddenly it was
You
like,
had
what are
two
we going to do?
small children.
I was like, what are we going to do? Because I do remember, yeah, I guess I do remember falling a bit apart and having to eventually just surrender. I tried to force and think of all these things we could do or what could happen, just surrendered to, I don't know what to do. You need something to happen. And something did happen. Found out our next door neighbor had a location we could use. And that's where we built the next iteration. So it is a time in your life where there can be unexpected things. A lot of people want to talk just all the negatives, like Saturn will bitch slap you or whatever. It's going to just knock you on your ass. But it can. But it's also, it's nothing to live in fear of. And I think I said, especially with your generation, you guys can be a little more aware of, like, as you approach these things, to be like, for you in particular, be like, okay, are there areas where I'm being
Mhm.
particularly hard nosed? Am I not giving quarter to someone else? Like, you could look at those things and be like, okay, Saturn, let's dance a
Maybe
little bit. Mhm.
maybe instead of getting bitch slapped, you can just get shook
A
and
little
shaken
shake.
a little bit.
Yeah. Because it's still, yeah, I mean, you're going to go through something and it's going to be for
Mhm.
your eventual good because, that's how we get there. So, just something to pay attention to. So, I think we figured that out, right? We got that established. It's a
Mhm.
time for, you know, starting to become your own person and establishing which direction you're going to go and understanding that there could be some bumps along the way, but it's just the beginning.
I don't know if that makes it feel better or worse.
I think it makes it feel better when you know that, like, everybody experiences some level of this,
Yeah.
and you can have the leg up by having the awareness that this was something that you're gonna maybe tussle with a little bit. So the next one we're gonna talk about is actually the one that I think is really interesting, and I think a lot of people, at least that come to me, are in the midst of experiencing, which is the
Mhm.
Uranus opposition. And so this occurs between the ages of like 38 to 44.
Okay.
And what's interesting is Uranus was one of the outer planets that was discovered in 1781 when
Sure.
we became these nine-centered beings instead of seven-centered beings. And so energetically, that meant that we crossed this threshold as as as, uh, as humans to where we now had a longer life cycle. And the Uranus, being this, has an 84-year orbit around the sun. Takes 84 years to go through the whole chart. Yeah, yeah, it's way out there. Way out there. And so that means that midway point is the opposition point, which is around 42, half of 84. But again, big moving planet, slow moving planet. You're gonna start feeling the pushes of it before and after it actually like comes through, which I guess was implied with the Saturn return. But just as it slowly comes in, it's gonna go out too. It's not like over like that. That's why
Yeah,
it takes a
it's not a
couple
light
years.
switch.
Yeah. Ugh, only. So this Uranus opposition then it's a turning point. It's a halfway point kind of in life. And it's what most people now experience as a midlife crisis because yeah. So what I love about Uranus that I learned today, which I didn't really know before. I knew it was like kind of the planet of like your unusualness, what makes you unique, your weirdness almost, right?
Well, it does
It's
have
called
the most out there name of the planets, I would say.
There's a lot of unusual things about it. So it's also referred to as like a planet of awakenings, a disruptor, this portion in your life. And it is about your uniqueness, your authenticity, and your unique way of seeing things. So, what's interesting about Uranus, what makes it different and unique, is that for one thing, well, there's lots of things, but one thing is that it actually sits at like almost 90, 98 degree tilt off its axis. So they say
Oh my
they
god.
think it got hit by something that kind of knocked it off
Was
its
it
axis.
was it Saturn? Did it get bitch slapped by Saturn?
Yeah, maybe. And then, and so that's one thing. I mean, we're not at a perfectly up and down axis.
Mhm.
We're at like what, 10 degrees or something like that. Or
I
10
think
or
maybe 28.
19 or
I don't know.
something like that.
18.
We're at Earth is at a little
Less
bit of
than
tilt, but
98.
this one pretty much looks like it's on its side. And the other planets, most of them, uh, or rotate at a counterclockwise rotation on their axis.
Mhm.
Uranus, and I think it's Venus too, goes in a clockwise direction. So it's
Oh.
does things differently. And then also when they first were able to finally, I think it was late 90s or 80s, I can't remember which one. And they finally got a telescope or a sat or something close enough to be able to actually observe it for the
Uh-huh.
first time. I think with a really strong telescope from Earth, you could see it's a very small blue ball, but
Mhm.
they could see that it was mostly gaseous. I didn't know it had rings. It has like a bunch of rings around it,
Mm.
which I think you don't always see. I said sometimes it's just depending on where it is in the orbit around the sun that you might see
That
them.
makes sense because if it's completely on its side,
Yeah,
like,
you wouldn't see it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So it's unusual and it's like a big gaseous planet. It's like covered
it's
in
a
this
very
like
pretty
blue
planet.
mist. Yeah, it's this blue mist. So it's kind of like the hidden
Mm.
gem. So that's sort of the representation here is what makes you different, what makes you unique. It's not always visible. You might not always see it. And so a Uranus opposition then is going to be I found this interesting correlation between the opposites. Well, there's another we've talked about opposites in human design before as far as like programming partners, not necessarily opposites, but things on the other side of the
Mhm. Like the
astrology
sun
wheel,
and the
like
earth.
the sun and the earth, and then the north and the south node, that there's always, if the sun is in gate 14, the earth's always going to be in gate 8, and vice versa. Well, if you think about a Uranus opposition, wherever Uranus sits in your chart, in your birth chart, for me, it's gate 48. In the opposition at midlife, it's going to be in the programming partner of Uranus, which that's very interesting to me because we learned when we talked about programming partners that they kind of have they have similarities in their themes and they kind of feed off each other in a way that, because like the 14 and the 8, the 14 is about having the fuel, the energy, the drive, the resources to fuel where your soul wants to go, the gate 2, right? It's like giving you the
Mhm.
gas. And well, gate 8 is all about being your own unique, authentic self, right? So it's like in order to have that dance between them, there's this overall theme there of like, okay, you have to be yourself and you have to
Mhm.
follow what's right for you. So if you're going to look at your Uranus opposition, that's something to consider as well. And so what happens during this time is I kind of say this is more the midlife crisis for some people. I think myself in particular, it can be a time where things can really just life can come at you. That sounds harsh as well, but this is what it feels like in the moment. It can feel like you blow your life up or something happens to blow your life up like but there's a purpose. The purpose
Mhm.
is okay, I established my identity in the world and I decided this is the direction I wanted to go. This is who I want to be. And Uranus comes along and says, are you sure? Do you know what that means? Is that really you? Are you being true to yourself? Are you actually following a path that's right for you? Or have you gotten lost along the way? Is a nice way to say it, I think.
Mm. Yeah.
Because things start happening in your life that might be beyond your control or circumstances change. Like I said, they call it the midlife crisis. Some people do it intentionally. They find their life so uncomfortable that they start making radical changes. Divorces happen. This is a time where a lot of women, in particular, men too, but women, if they've been in the process of having children in families, you could definitely lose yourself in that part of life because everything is about everybody else.
Mhm.
And you kind of, and I always say it's like not just children, but sometimes things happen where you kind of have to go into survival mode and just exist and just keep going.
Mhm.
And so like I said, this cycle in life can bring a lot of changes in your life because it's maybe you've started along a path that's no longer aligned with who you intended to be, let's say. So the other thing you can look at, definitely, you're going to look at your Uranus theme and then look at the opposition theme and see what the lessons might be there for you. What's nice for you, you don't have to worry about this for a while. We'll probably focus on me because I have experience here, but it's also something to consider. So this is also around the time when you are shifting from your south node themes to your north node themes as well.
Mm.
So again, it's like we talked about how that south node is the things that are more comfortable for you. It's what's more familiar, but it's pushing you into like a new role in your life of what may feel, like I said, uncomfortable because it's new to you. And this really is a time to have an opportunity to course correct if things have kind of gotten off track. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go through these catastrophic things, but be aware it can happen. And I find it comforting because it can feel like, oh my God, I've screwed up my whole life, or what's happened in my life, or what have I done is usually what we try to go to because we're like, I fucked it all up. This isn't who I wanted to be. But
Mhm.
this is what it's for, is to be like, okay, who do you want to be? Who are you really beyond what you thought you were? And so it can really push you to question your identity and
Mhm.
see yourself beyond the labels that you took on.
It's like a safety checkpoint before you get too far down the road and really just go downhill.
Yeah. But I can see it now in friends. It's funny because a lot of my friends are like 10 years younger than me.
Mhm.
And I'm just paying attention now to see what's happening in their lives and how they're dealing with it and what their challenges are, and can help kind of like, it'll be okay. Now, so mine was in, yeah, like I said, you don't have to worry. Yours don't come till 2040.
Oh god.
Haley, in 2040, you're going to be 43 years old.
Ew.
Oh, ew. Yeah.
No.
I'd give anything.
I don't.
So mine occurred in 2013 at
Oh.
42. Now, I will tell anyone that those years between 40, 43, beyond, everything changed in my life, or at least it felt like it did. 2010s when my mother got sick, and I spent 2 years helping her through cancer, and then she passed away in 2012. 2010 is also when Hunter came into our life and took on the new responsibility of helping him and his grandmother.
That was also
2013,
2010?
yeah. Yeah, that was 2010.
Damn.
Mom got diagnosed in well, Jeff died and his dad died uh January, I think, and my mom got diagnosed in February. And then it was later that year in the summertime is when Hunter started spending more time with us and
Mhm.
staying with us. And then really it did all kind of come to a head in 2013 because that's when I finally had a break in my life from the identity and a lot of the friendships that I had built in the yoga community I was in.
Mhm.
And everything there just completely fell apart. I realized I was in a unhealthy relationship with a friend
Super toxic.
that affected all my other friendships. And I came to and when you look at the context of what Uranus can teach you, I came to the very hard realization that a lot of the things I thought and felt and believed, and even how I controlled my own life, were a voice in my head that was somebody else's. It wasn't my
Yeah.
own. And it came to having to just dismantle all of that, which was precipitated by the very difficult journey leading up to this Uranus opposition with my mother and having to go through that and saying, like, what's really important in life,
Mhm.
and coming to terms with, like, whose life am I living now? It's like I was doing this, now I'm doing that. And literally in that year, it was later in the year in 2013 when everything just kind of fell apart, and I initially lost that friendship, a lot of other friendships, because all my friends were all tied around this one person. I had another really good friend move away. I think I lost pets, like, also grieving my mom. Like, thank God I had you guys and family, my family, we were solid. But, like, it literally felt like everything in my life that I thought was me, except for you guys, got completely stripped away, and I had to start over again.
Mhm.
And it was a very, for me, difficult, hard time, but it definitely had its rewards at the other end, because yeah, you get to know yourself a little bit better and what's important to you, and decide if that's the path you want to go, or if you want to course correct. Like you said, it's like a little safety check along the
Mhm.
way. But to know that if you are in that stage of your life, either coming up to it or maybe coming out of it, to take a look at some of these placements in your chart and see what the themes are. Mine were around, so my Uranus placement is in gate 48, the well, having the depth, having a lot more depth than you think you do,
Mhm.
a lot more than you think you do. And then the opposite of that, gate 21, was, which is in the will center, a lot of issues around control, and either trying to take too much control or giving away control, which I was doing both. I really got showed hard that so many things were out of my control with that whole journey with my mom, and learning after that also with Hunter and his grandmother, that I just had to be a different person. I had to not make it all about me. It had to be other people were in charge of some of those things as well. And also, I learned a lesson that I'd given away a lot of my own personal control and trusted someone else's authority and someone
Mhm.
else's knowledge as being more important or better than my own. And so I got on both
Which it
sides.
wasn't.
Thank you. And so, yeah, so that is an example I have. I mean, as far as you coming up, like I said, it's a long way away. Who knows what identities you're taking on, but also your Uranus opposition is right in the middle of that roof period as well. So it's like we talk a lot about line 6 being on the roof, that is a
Mhm.
time to, you enter that objective phase of life, of where life was coming at you, but now you're in the roof, on the roof. You get to start to make more intentions about where it is that you, who it is you want to be, who you want to be
Mhm.
with, how you want to spend your time, what worked, what didn't work, how other people do things, right? And
Mhm.
then in the middle of that time, you're going to have this Uranus opposition that's almost like, okay, so how's it going?
Yeah. It's like, what do you think? What do you
And
feel?
so most so most line six, from what I hear, that pressure you're feeling right now is going to lessen as you get up on the roof. You're not going
I
to
hope
feel that
so.
urgency to have it all figured out, right? And I think everybody I've ever talked to had the same experience, that they didn't think it was going to shift, but it'll shift. And so there is a lot of that evaluating time. And as a line six, you're going to learn a lot there. You're going to have a lot of knowledge, or wisdom, not knowledge, wisdom,
Mhm.
as to what some of these choices you've made in life, how you want to continue on. Let's see, your Uranus is in gate 41 on both sides as your natal chart. And then your Uranus opposition then is going to be in gate 31. And so gate 41 is about the overall theme in your life, your where you stand out and your uniqueness is being able to, it's in the root, and it's the beginning of that circuitry there, which is about experience, about, so gate 41 is it's called contraction, and it's also in the I Ching called decrease. And so imagination, and it's really, it's about, if we know it's in the root, it's about starting something new, right?
Mhm.
It's about the energy of something wanting to come forward. And so the energy there is someone who is able to envision and to kind of as they wait for the pulse or wait for the something new to begin, you're kind of laying the groundwork in your imagination, in your field of like potential of like what could happen. What do you want to have happen? What do you want it to look like? And they even refer to it as, some of the shadows of being fantasy because it's like it's not happened yet. You're kind of living in a fantasy world. But this is remember, this is your uniqueness. In some way, it's going to be about part of your contribution in this world, and the things you're going to experience are going to be around this. This is what sets you apart as someone who can like hold a vision or hold potential fantasy of not knowing what's going to happen, but you're like, let's get going. We want to have this really exciting thing happen, right? And so the opposition side of that, the gate 31, which is in the throat center, it is about influence, having some sort of, whoops, because it's in that channel 731. So there's a lot of leadership energy there as well. And it is the gate of influence and being influential. And so, really, during that time, maybe looking at some of those themes around influence, because uh, knowing that a theme in your life with what sets you apart is creating this vision. So you've got to be responsible because you have a lot of influence there. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and what's also interesting is for you, the incarnation cross there is in the during that time
Mm-hmm.
is the vessel of love 3. And so the vessel of love is really about guiding others to recognize that love is the core energy that directs everything. It's about showing people that aligning with self love and compassion can help you live with greater purpose, joy, and fulfillment. So if you think about, okay, that's the overarching kind of theme through that incarnation cross. But then you're also there to learn about leadership, which is also going to be very influential. So it's like, who knows what you're going to be doing when you're 43 years old, but these themes are going to start coming around and being present, that maybe you be checking in with life and seeing if those themes are playing out the way you want to. So likewise, I didn't mention it before, but the incarnation cross that was present during my Uranus
Mm-hmm.
opposition was the left angle cross of confrontation. And this cross is about claiming your power, your control, your birthright. To find it, these people that are born under that cross are leaders. They're not really good at following the rules of someone else because that's the sun in gate 45, which is that hunter, huntress, king, queen energy, whatever you want to
Mm-hmm.
call it. And so is themes of like healing your self-worth and value and blah blah blah, and holy cow, yeah, I learned a lot of that at that time. Now as we move into the next cycle, it's like, well, have I really learned some of those lessons? Because
Mm-hmm.
did you have any questions about the Uranus opposition before I move on?
I don't think so.
Okay, so yeah, I think you pulled it together really good. It's another safety check. Maybe it's like, don't you love those? Oh, you've seen them a couple times. Well, you live in the mountains now. The
Mm-hmm.
the runaway like truck
Oh yeah,
ramp. Do you
truck
see those
ramps.
there
The
in
runaway
Colorado?
truck ramps. Yeah.
Just in case.
I saw a reel of that the other day, but actually in use, like it was
Oh
someone
yeah,
that was.
yeah, I did
It's
too
wild.
because you
It's
saw
wild.
it. Yeah, I mean, it's probably all the reels we send back and forth to each other. Algorithms like these are the same people. I think
Yeah,
this is the same
Instagram's like
person.
we don't need to think too hard on this one.
So, anyways, okay, well let's move on then. So, the next big one that comes along is the Chiron return, which, as I said, we've gone really in depth
Mhm.
on Chiron return in the episode previous. You can just look for Chiron return, you'll find it. And so, Chiron is not a planet, if you remember.
It's a planetoid.
Yeah. And it's referred to as the wounded healer because in mythology it was Chiron. It was, God, I can't remember the long story then. It was he was wounded in battle, and then his wound actually became a source for something that he ended up giving to someone else, immortality, so that he could finally, I think he had like immortality, but he was an eternity of pain. So he ended up giving away his immortality so that
Mm.
it meant he would die, but then he would also not be in pain anymore, something like that. Do you remember that?
No, but I think
I
that
might
was
cut that
like
out.
one of the first 10 episodes we did, I swear.
It was a while ago. Yeah. And so Chiron in the chart, they refer to it as the wounded healer because it shows us where our wound that we came into this world with, our whatever, when you were born, whatever sign Chiron was in, has a certain theme that whenever you are kind of up leveling in life or things are moving and you're going to a next level or making changes in life,
Mhm.
quite often this theme can come up again and again and again. So when you enter your Chiron return, it is towards your 50th birthday, which is also when the line 6 comes off the roof, right? And so again, this could be anywhere between like 48 and 52. And
There's really
this
not
is,
much break between Uranus.
well, see, that's the thing. What a lot of people don't know. Yeah, right. I mean, it does.
It's like
You're
right
pretty
there.
much getting out of yeah, it's a difficult, your 40s can be a great learning experience. And that's also why it became such a gift to me learning about this specifically through human design and hearing and now believing that you don't fully really become a full person until you cross your 50th birthday because you've gone through these major life cycles that have kind of helped chip away at the marble to reveal this who you are, right?
Mhm.
It's peeling back all those layers of the onion over all these years. I mean, it could be worse. It could happen in like 5 years. You could go through all this stuff, but you have time to kind of integrate. It sounds like a lot, but remember, these are years. These are
Mhm.
decades that this is happening. So it sounds like a lot, but you actually when you're in it, it's not so intense. There can be moments of intensity. I'm just
It's just
telling you.
not constant intensity.
Yeah, if you're doing it right. If you're learning. If you're refusing to learn and you don't change and you don't, like, step back and evaluate what you're doing in your life, yes,
Godspeed.
it could be decades of absolute agony.
Oh,
I don't encourage that.
no.
Obviously, I am a person who has spent her life saying, "No, you need to step back and look at what are you doing?"
Mhm. But you know
And
what? That's why people are here listening to us, because they
I
don't
hope
wanna go
so.
through that.
Yeah, I know. Well, when I think back that first Saturn return around that time would have been around the time also pretty close after that is when I really started yoga. I started my first yoga class like 2003 or 2004 after coming to some of these realizations of like I had gotten kind of I'd started building a life, but it was like, whoa, what is this life about? And then it refined and it keeps refining of what's important to me, who I want to be. And so your Chiron return brings some of these themes, these lessons around again.
Mhm.
And it's another time of really awakening and really being able to heal and release things from the past that you might not have known how to deal with
Mm.
before because, well, life was happening. You didn't have the experience. You didn't necessarily know who you are. So if you have this more grounded sense of who you are as you approach 50, then when these themes start coming around again, you can evaluate, be like, okay, how am I doing? Have I learned anything?
Mm.
Have I healed anything? And also, the beauty of Chiron is you find that where your wounds are is where your hidden gifts are as well, which, like I said, we go into depth of that in the episode. So, really, at this time, it's like, can you see if there's any themes that have been resurfacing in your life every time you up leveled or something that happened? And how have you learned to manage that, deal with that? Have you grown? Have you found that there's a different way of doing things? And then it so like this is when we talk about Chiron in our episode, we also talked about the sign it was in because I think that was really important too. This is one
Mhm.
of those I think is important because there's that general theme there. And the only reason I bring it up is 'cause I can remember mine because it was in Aries and it has a lot to do with expressing yourself and your uniqueness, your being wounded around that of like standing out or any of this other stuff. The sign it was, or excuse me, the gate for myself was in gate 17. And so Chiron also, even though this is return, is when it comes back to the place in your chart you were born, still it's a theme going on in your life. Your Chiron. Oh, there it is. Your Chiron is in gate 50. Mine is in gate 17. So that 17, again, we talked about those themes about having
Opinions.
your opinions and
Being
having
wounded.
your hmm?
So being wounded, being your opinions, probably being belittled or like knocked down.
Well, not trusting my own self in regards to what I know or what I think or what that it's just there was, and this has definitely been a theme and out throughout my life is trusting that part of myself and understanding that I do have my own input. I do have my way of seeing things. Yeah, and so I think through human design, the gate can kind of help you see some of those themes there, but I really think a lot of it has to do with the actual sign that Chiron was in. I think can help you a little bit deeper on this one. So that would be I linked it before in the Chiron episode, but I guess I could link it in this episode as well. A little PDF that has the year you were born, what sign it was in, that kind of thing. So, what
Mhm.
sign your Chiron was in to help you kind of identify those things. But really, it's about noticing those themes that come up over your lifetime and how you have managed them and have you made changes? Have you grown? Can you now see your gifts in where the places that you've been kind of holding yourself back or felt wounded, that you kind of felt vulnerable and hiding in a way?
Mhm.
And so, and really, I think the last most relevant one, which we won't go into too much, is the second Saturn return because it does happen at the end of your 50s. But by this point, if you have been if you have been on the path of learning the lessons and always with the intention of growth and expansion, it's gonna be a really good time just because it's Saturn returning, it's asking you again, it's the disciplinarian, it's maturing to another level because I say your first Saturn return is maturing into adulthood, but now you're kind of maturing into that next phase of life, which the more I hear about moving into that next phase, your 60s, a lot of people are like, they get there and they're like, this is where life really gets good.
Mhm.
Because you've been through all the major life cycle changes. You've possibly had children, grown families, businesses. Maybe you're able to retire in your 60s if you want to. You're really, I find, especially women are just like, they get in their 60s and they're like, I am so tired of,
Do my
I
thing.
am, yeah, I am finally, not to say finally, hopefully you've been doing it before then, but it really is the chance to look back and see everything you've done, everything you've built. Is there anything you haven't really gotten to yet? Is there anything you still want to do? And so I mean, so they say you're kind of moving into your senior cycle, but I kind of just doesn't sound great.
Early.
And so really, I mean, I think it is beautiful on the way because this is when you really can step into that elder role, and we don't value our elders enough in this country. Obviously, we just kind of chuck them aside. But let me tell you, I saw something the other day, which maybe you'll see it soon, thanks to Instagram, if I don't share it with you. About in Japan, it was this guy saying how maybe you did. I'm going to tell you, and you'll be like, oh, I saw that reel. I think he was an American or European. I don't remember which one, living in Japan, and found out they have this thing called rent an old man.
Oh.
And it's literally it looks like a dating app. It's not really a dating app, but you know what I mean. It like people register themselves on there as an older man, and you
Oh.
can literally like rent one for a day or two. And this guy rented one, and he was like 58 years old, and they just spent the day together. They just hung out. They went and saw some sights. They went and had coffee. They had lunch, and it showed them throughout the day, just kind of talking to each other. And the guy's just kind of imparting his wisdom, and he was just
Oh.
hanging out with them. And I was like, I thought that was so cool.
So
And
cute.
And we don't, I mean, you think about the grandparents, everybody wants to be with the grandparents, and it's that second chance as a grandparent to, and they talk about the experience of grandparents of being different with their grandchildren than they were with their children because, well, one, hello, you've got a lot more life experience now, right? I mean,
Mhm.
after we just talked about these cycles, you can see that if you've been doing life right, you've
Mhm.
learned some things and you want to pass that on. You want to share that. And I think we should value that in our elders. And we don't spend enough time together, the generations, I don't think anymore in this country. We
Yeah.
don't. And then I can tell you that when they're not there anymore, it's my mom passed away when she was 69. You don't remember much about her. You remember little
Mhm.
things. But all the things now that I wish I could ask her, things that happened in our lives or just memories or whatever, and it's just not there anymore. So if you are listening and you still have those connections with your elderly parents or grandparents, to don't take that for granted. They are there. Now Richard's parents died in their, well, his dad was 92, 91. His mom was around that 89 or something like that. But anyways, so yeah, this is the time when you can really just, Saturn will just come around again and say, hey, any loose ends you want to tie up, anything you still feel like you need to work on. But then if you've done it right the first time and you've gotten through all the other ones, it's pretty smooth sailing from there. And
I
then,
feel like
like you
that
said,
time Saturn just give you like a nod, like, so.
yeah. And then maybe 10 years or so from now, I'll talk about the Uranus return and the third Saturn return. I might be like, now it's time to talk about what happens when you're 84 and 89. But we are living longer, they say. So I don't know. So, anyways, that's the gist of it there. And I've, like I said, I find it's really helpful to look at your place in your life where you are right now and check out some of those cycles. And of course, like I said, I don't do a specific life cycle analysis, which sounds just so like dry and boring. But what I do in readings, which I'm owning more of now, is that yes, I have the human design knowledge is there, but I also have the wisdom of my own lived experience. And
Mhm.
I also use a lot of my own throughout these years, and especially in this last couple years, accepting those parts of myself and not accepting them, but really leaning into them. These things that I knew might be there, but human design has helped illuminate them for me, tapping into my intuition and allowing that connection to really clearly come through. And so when, like I said, I get a lot of people that come to me that are in some of these cycles, particularly around that Uranus opposition, Chiron return, needing that help and that guidance. And I can certainly use the chart to help you kind of get to faster where these blind spots might be, where these areas you might need to work on. And then also just through our own conversation and the intuition comes in, there can be a lot of guidance that comes through. Don't really know what's going to happen, but usually I find that you'll gain some clarity on what may be happening and what you need to focus on. So if you want some help around that, you can certainly check out the links in the show notes to book a reading with me. Love to help you out.
Mhm.
So let's wrap it up, Haley. You know what time it is?
The incarnation cross of the week.
That's right.
Woo
The
woo.
incarnation cross of the week. And this week, we are going to be talking about the right angle cross of tension 3.
Race.
Mhm. The right angle cross of tension 3 means they are a
Their profile starts with a line 1, 2, 3, or there are 4, 6.
correct, which I find great gratification hearing Karen Curry Parker, who's an authority in my life, say that still doesn't make sense to her why the 4-6 is a right angle cross, why it's an interpersonal uh, profile. She said, I've heard the rumors, not the rumors, it's a personal, interpersonal, right? Your experience,
Mhm.
not the rumors. She's heard the explanations. She goes, but I'm sorry, I don't get it. It still doesn't make sense. So there you go, people. I don't feel so bad now because I don't quite get it either, but it is what it is. Doesn't make any sense. But, anyways, that's what they say. So, this cross consists of the sun on your personality side in gate 48, depth, Earth, gate 21, the hunter, huntress. On the design side, it's in gate 39, provocation, and the Earth is in gate 38, the fighter.
So we have depth, hunter, huntress, provocation, and the fighter. Let's see where this one goes.
Okay, so if you were born under the right angle cross of tension 3, you have the energy to lead and maintain order within your environment, whether that's in your community, workplace, or family. Your leadership is informed by a profound wisdom that intuitively emerges, often sparked by the thought-provoking perspectives that you bring to the table. You don't intend to create tension or conflict, but rather to foster a healthy disruption that ensures everything aligns and operates smoothly. It's through this unique method of provoking thought and challenging the status quo that you bring clarity and alignment to those around you. Through your dedication to learning, studying, and investigating, you've come to realize that self-regulation, i.e., managing emotions, reactions, and energy, plays a crucial role in achieving dreams and creating lasting abundance. You have the ability to perceive when something is misaligned with abundance, whether that's in someone's mindset, their actions, or their beliefs. With this understanding, you can then use your wisdom to gently guide others back into alignment, helping them to reconnect with the flow of support, sufficiency, and potential. You have a vision of an abundant world where people can live harmoniously, aligned with their true purpose. Through your own practices of self-regulation and embodiment, you model for others what is possible. You are consistently aligning your actions, studies, and teachings with your profound insight into what it takes to bring your visions into reality. By living in alignment with your purpose, you encourage others to do the same, offering them a pathway to harmony, fulfillment, and abundance. It's a big one.
So good. They're always so good.
Well, like I said, I do like the balance there between the 38 and the 39, because that 39, that provocation, is another one of those that people that have that energy, they do tend to provoke
and poke.
unintentionally. Yeah, their energy does it. They don't necessarily do it. It can be challenging, but if you know that that's what it is, but it's like it said in there, it's helping to bring the environment into alignment. It's that tuning fork.
That said, it's creating those thought-provoking questions. I can see it as stopping community, your family, whatever, from just keep going on the path you're on, because that's what you're on. It's like, why are we actually doing this? What's the purpose? Why?
Yeah. Yeah. With the intention of creating something beautiful and alignment, for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for listening, Haley.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking.
You're welcome. And for you out there listening, we thank you as well for being here, because it helps us bring us together. We're learning along with you. Like I said, I may be a few steps ahead, but I'm always learning, and Haley's learning, and you're always learning. And if we're ever really going to be good teachers of anything, we're always learning. So I thank you for the opportunity to allow me to continue to learn and share. So with that, we will say adieu. What is it? Good day, sir.
I said good day.
All right. Bye for now. Love you, Haley. Bye.
Bye.
You made it all the way to the end of today's episode, so you must have liked what you heard. If you did, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode, and perhaps leave us a good review. And if you know someone who wants to dig into all things human design with us, make sure you share the Human Design Hive podcast with them. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks for listening.